So we continue with economics A level, supply of labor. So we're going to other factors that might shift the supply curve leftward or rightward. The first one is income tax. The next one is income tax. Now, when we talk about income tax, I wrote an increase in income tax reduces disposable income, which makes working less attractive. This may lead some workers in low-paid jobs to seek alternative by finding occupations with higher wage rates. This in turn reduces the supply of labor to low-paid occupations. This will shift the supply curve of labor leftward from S to S1. The first one is income tax. And when we talk about income tax, we're talking about tax paid on the earnings of employees. So if the tax you pay on your earnings increases, it reduces your disposable income. And as soon as your disposable income reduces, you don't have that incentive to want to employ. You don't have that incentive to want to work. Get the point here. Income tax. You're paying taxes on your earnings. So if the tax you pay on your earnings increases, it simply means that your disposable income will fall. What is disposable income? The amount of money you can either save or spend. So if the amount of money you can either save or spend reduces, that might give you a disincentive to want to work. So the supply of labor might reduce if income tax rates, especially on low-paid job, increases. So that will shift the supply curve for labor leftward. Is it clear?
Yeah.
Then another one is progressive tax. When we talk about progressive tax, these are taxes charged on high income earners. So if progressive tax increases, or if there's progressive tax, the supply of labor for such occupation would reduce, shifting the supply curve leftward. So an increase in income tax, a progressive tax, will shift the supply of labor to the left. Is it clear? Any question about income tax and progressive tax? No, good. Yeah, that takes us to okay, so that will shift it leftward. So both progressive tax will shift supply curve leftward. I think it's clear.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we have another point is here. If income tax is not paid by people on low income, then the workers have an incentive to supply their labor. This will shift the supply curve of labor leftward. If you don't pay income tax, let's say, for example, though teaching is a high-paying job anyway, so I won't use teaching. Maybe some jobs that are low paid. If low-income earners do not pay taxes, it simply means people have the incentive to supply labor for those occupations that are paid low because they don't pay taxes. So not paying taxes means you have more disposable income. Do you get it? So there's incentive or there's motivation for you to supply labor in such job. And that would shift the supply curve of labor rightward. Is it clear?
Yeah.
Any question about that?
No.
Now we have what we call fiscal drag. For fiscal drag, I wrote, this occurs when, excuse me, please. Okay. So we have what we call fiscal drag. For fiscal drag, this occurs when the government's net fiscal position fails to cover the net savings desires of the private economy. So for fiscal drag, it simply means that there's a situation where an increase in tax doesn't allow private individuals to save as they wish to save. And that will bring about what? A drag on the economy. So people will not be able to spend as they used to spend. So that is what fiscal drag is. And whenever there's fiscal drag, it shifts the supply curve of labor leftward. Do you understand? Any question about that?
No.
So the next factor that could affect or that could shift the supply curve of labor to the right or left is level of welfare benefits. So these mainly affect occupations that are paid wage that are paid wage rates, not that their paid wage rates is not much higher than welfare benefit paid by government. So if the level of welfare payments increases, the supply of labor of some occupations may decrease as workers leave the labor market and remain unemployed, as work doesn't appear to be worth it or appealing. The level of welfare payment. If the level of welfare payment increases in relative to your earnings working, so there's no point working. So instead of working, when I'm going to get less, like it's almost the same or just slightly above the welfare payment. So what's the point working? So if the level of welfare increases in an economy, people would tend to be unemployed because they would as well make more without even working. So that will shift the supply curve of labor to the left for low-paid jobs. Clear?
Mm-hmm.
However, if the level of welfare benefit is low, then the supply of labor is likely to increase to low-paid occupations as take-home pay is higher than welfare benefits. On the other hand, if the welfare benefit is less compared to earnings, when you work, the supply of labor is expected to rise because people would know that when they work, they earn more than not working at all. Clear? In summary, a rise in welfare benefit will reduce the supply of labor to low-paid jobs, while a fall in welfare benefit will increase the supply of labor. It's like to increase the supply of labor to low-paid jobs. I think it's clear. Yeah. So that will shift. An increase in welfare will shift the supply curve leftward. A fall in welfare will shift the supply curve rightward. Clear? Then the next one is government regulations. When we talk about government regulations, we're simply talking about the minimum requirements or for entry level. So if the entry level to get as a young graduate to get a job, the requirement to get a job is high. That means it's very strict. The supply of labor in such occupation would reduce. And which means because the supply of labor in such occupation reduces, the wage rate would rise. Is it making sense or not? So the introduction of minimum entry requirement for certain occupation will restrict the supply of labor and force pay leads level higher. So this simply means it becomes difficult to qualify for specific jobs. This will in turn shift the supply curve of labor leftward, unless there is positive net migration for the occupation. So if the entry requirement for teachers, to employ teachers, if the requirement to employ teachers is high, it means the supply of teacher will be less, yes or no? The only thing that will make the supply of teacher increase is that if there is positive net migration about teachers. So if there's a positive net migration for certain occupation, the supply curve for labor will shift rightward. But if it's a negative one and the regulations are high to bring about a leftward shift in supply curve. Is it clear? Yeah. Any question about that? No. Okay. The next one is trade unions. Are you there?
Trade unions.
Yeah. So for trade unions have influence on wage levels in particular occupations. Therefore, may attract workers from other occupations that do not have trade union membership and have lower wage rates. So if trade union makes certain occupation attractive, the supply of labor for such occupation is expected to rise. This will shift the supply curve rightward from S to S1. So trade unions are a group of people, organizations that are there, that are established to protect the interests of workers. So they influence the wage rates, and they can, because they have power, they can influence things. They might as well increase or improve the wages of workers. So if there are some occupations that do not have the ability to, or if there are some occupations that the employees cannot belong to a trade union member, such occupation will not have influence. That means trade union don't have influence on such occupation. So the wage rate for such occupation would fall. Then workers will start thinking about working in an occupation that has trade union influence. Because when there's trade union influence, the likelihood of having more pay is high. So jobs with trade union influence have more supply of labor than jobs without trade union influence. Is it clear? Any questions about that?
No.
So that takes us to elasticity of supply of labor. Are you there?
Yes, sir.
So for elasticity of supply of labor, what's the elasticity of supply of labor? It is the degree of responsiveness between the quantity supply of labor as a result of a change in the price of labor. And the price of labor is what? The wage. I think it's clear.
Yeah.
So what is the formula for elasticity of supply of labor? It is percentage change in the quantity supply of labor divided by percentage change in the wage rate. I think it's clear.
Yeah.
So that takes us to the factors that influences the elasticity of supply of labor. Are you there?
Yeah.
So, okay, before we go into that, let's talk about elastic supply of labor and inelastic supply of labor. It is elastic supply of labor if a change in the wage leads to a significant larger change in the numbers of workers that are willing to work. So a change in the wage rate brings about a significant change in the numbers of workers that are willing to work. That is elastic, and it is greater than 1. Then it is inelastic. This is the graph representation of elastic. It is elastic. It is elastic. Then it is inelastic if a change in wage leads to what? A less significant change in the numbers of workers that are willing to work. That is inelastic. And for inelastic, it is this. This is inelastic. I think it's clear. Great. Then, what are the factors that influences the elasticity of supply of labor? The first factor is availability of suitable labor in other industries. So if I wrote, the elasticity of supply of labor for workers who have skills suitable for more than one industry is likely to be elastic. So if workers are suitable, if workers are flexible in terms of their skills, that means they have skills that are suitable for different industries. So the elasticity of supply of labor for such workers are expected to rise. So it is elastic because workers can switch from one job to another at any point in time. So if the wage rate increases there, workers might switch here because they have the flexibility because they have different skills that can be used in different organizations or industries.
Yeah.
Is it clear?
Yeah.
So if workers have suitable skills for different industries, the elasticity of supply of labor is what? Elastic. Clear? Is it clear, please?
Yeah.
Another factor that could influence elasticity of supply of labor is time. Time is all about the short run and the long run. In the short run, the price elasticity, the elasticity of supply of labor is definitely going to be inelastic because in the short run you might not be able to employ teachers. In the short run, you might not be able to employ doctors. In the short run, you might not be able to employ engineers because the supply of labor in such situation is what? Is less. Do you understand? So in the short run, the supply of labor is expected to be what? Inelastic. But in the long run, the supply of labor is what? Elastic.
Elastic.
Clear, right?
Yeah.
And the last factor that could influence elasticity of supply of labor is the extent of unemployment. And what is unemployment? Unemployment simply means people who are willing and able to work could not secure a job. Right?
Yeah.
So if there's high unemployment rate, the elasticity of supply of labor will be what? Elastic. Why? I wrote, the higher the unemployment, the more elastic the elasticity of supply is likely to be. With higher unemployment, firms are more likely to be able to recruit workers at the existing real wage rate from the pool of unemployed because there are large numbers of unemployed people. So it means a lot of people are willing to making themselves available for job. So that means the supply of labor, the elasticity of supply of labor for unemployed situation is what? Elastic. Because there are a lot of people that are willing to work. So that ends the supply of labor. Any question about it?
No.
Thank you.